When we think of Britain, we tend to picture it as this single, solid place. But really, its identity is built up in layers. Layers of invasion, settlement, and culture. So today, we're going to go on a kind of archaeological dig through time to uncover the very foundations of what it means to be British.
So what makes Britain British? It sounds like a pretty simple question, doesn't it? But the answer is this incredibly complex tapestry, woven together over thousands of years of conquest and migration. To really get it, we need to stop thinking like we're just reading a history book and start thinking more like archaeologists.
That's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to dig down, layer by layer, starting from what we see today and going all the way back to the bedrock to see how every single era left its mark. So grab your shovels. Let's dig in. So, here's our plan. Our dig is going to take us through 4 major historical layers. We'll start with Britain's ancient foundations, then move up to the super-organized Roman occupation. After that, we hit the chaotic but crucial age of the Anglo-Saxons and Vikings, and finally, we'll uncover the game-changing Norman conquest. And then, we'll step back and see how it all fits together.
All right, let's get started at the very bottom, the bedrock of our historical dig. We're talking about a time before the Romans, before the kings and queens we've all heard of. What was Britain back then?
Well, for starters, it wasn't always an island. For a long time, Britain was actually connected to mainland Europe by a huge stretch of land. But then, about 10,000 years ago, the last ice age started to melt away. The sea levels rose, and whoosh, that land bridge was flooded. Britain became an island, and that single geographic fact changed its destiny forever. Remember that number, 10,000 years ago, the island story begins.
And this prehistoric period was just buzzing with change. About 6,000 years ago, the first farmers show up and start building these incredible monuments, like Stonehenge. Then comes the Bronze Age, with skilled metalworkers forging tools and weapons. And finally, the Iron Age, where Celtic-speaking tribes built massive hill forts and even started minting their own coins. Think of it as 3 stages: stone, bronze, iron. Easy, right?
Okay, so on top of that ancient bedrock comes our next layer. And this one is different. It's a highly organized, incredibly powerful force that would completely reshape Britain. I am talking, of course, about the Romans. Now, you might have heard of Julius Caesar popping over a century earlier, but that was more of a scouting mission. The real conquest, the one that stuck, kicked off in AD 43. That's the year Emperor Claudius sent his legions, and they weren't just visiting, they were there to stay. Remember the year, AD 43 is when Roman Britain truly starts.
But the Brits didn't just roll over. Oh no. The most famous resistance came from Boudica, the warrior queen of the Iceni tribe. After being horribly mistreated by the Romans, she led this absolutely furious rebellion that burned Roman cities, including London, right to the ground before she was finally defeated. What a story!
But for all their power, the Romans never managed to conquer the entire island. The north, what we now call Scotland, remained wild and unconquered. So, to mark the edge of their empire and keep out the tribes they called the Picts, Emperor Hadrian built a massive wall, a wall so big you can still walk along parts of it today.
And the Romans stuck around for nearly 400 years. I mean, think about that. That is way longer than the United States has even been a country. They built roads, cities, introduced new laws, and even paved the way for Christianity. Britain became a thoroughly Roman place. That's an easy number to remember. 4 centuries of Roman rule.
But here's the thing about empires. They don't last forever. After those 4 centuries, the Roman army packed up and left. And that created this huge power vacuum. And into that vacuum rushed a whole new, kind of chaotic, and totally transformative era.
The year AD 410 is a massive turning point. The Roman legions sail away for good and Britain's defenses just crumble. This was basically a giant help-yourself sign for tribes from Northern Europe, the Jutes, the Angles, and the Saxons. They came first to raid, but pretty soon they started to settle, carving out a whole new set of kingdoms for themselves. The key date here is AD 410. When the Romans leave, everything changes.
And maybe the most incredible legacy they left behind? Well, it's the very words I'm using right now. The language of the Angles, or Anglish, is what eventually evolved into modern English. We are quite literally speaking their history. It's amazing when you think about it.
But the Anglo-Saxons weren't the only newcomers. Just when you think things might be settling down, nope, a new wave of invaders arrives. The Vikings. And just like the Anglo-Saxons, they came from the sea. First to raid, but then to settle down, eventually conquering a huge part of eastern England that became known as the Danelaw.
So after centuries of Anglo-Saxon kings and Viking settlements, one final, decisive invasion was on the horizon. This is the last foundational layer we're going to dig through. And you know what? It's probably the most famous one of all.
1066? If you remember one date from English history, it's this one. And for a very good reason. It marks the last time England was successfully invaded, and it was an event that would change its language, its government, and its entire social structure forever. Remember this date, it's the one that changed everything.
In the autumn of 1066, the entire fate of England was decided in a single bloody day at the Battle of Hastings. The Saxon king, Harold, was famously killed, legend says, by an arrow to the eye. The winner, William, Duke of Normandy, seized the throne and completely replaced the Old English ruling class with his own French-speaking nobles.
Now, to get a handle on what he'd just conquered and to figure out how to tax it all, William ordered this incredible nationwide survey. It was called the Doomsday Book, and it listed every town, every village, every person, every single pig. It's this amazing snapshot of the country right at that moment. Think of this as the ultimate national census.
Whew, okay. So we've dug through all the layers. We started with that ancient Celtic bedrock, then we hit the rigid Roman concrete, dug through the deep Anglo-Saxon soil, and finally uncovered those imposing Norman stones right on top. So what does this cross-section of history actually tell us?
Well, it shows us that modern Britain isn't just one thing. It's a composite, a direct result of all these layers stacked on top of each other. From the Romans, you get the ghosts of straight roads and ideas about law. From the Anglo-Saxons, you get the very heart of the English language. From the Vikings, you get place names and a spirit of trade. And from the Normans, a whole new system of government. Every single group left something important behind.
And that leaves us with one final thought. This history, it isn't just locked away in museums. It's literally written into the landscape. You can drive on it on a dead straight Roman road. You can hear it in a town name that ends in "by." That's a Viking giveaway. You can look up at it in the stone walls of a Norman castle. The real question is, now that you know what you're looking for, where else are you going to see these layers of history hiding in plain sight?